My husband stole my house and married my sister. 15 years later, I bought back everything they took and forced them into living in a slum. I was never the kind of woman who stood out. I wasn't as pretty as my younger sister, not as talkative as my mother, not as sharp as my college friends. I only knew how to live kindly, work hard, and always try not to upset anyone. I lived in a small coastal town in California, the kind of place where everyone knows each other, where summer always carried the scent of sea salt and freshly baked pies drifting in the breeze. The house I lived in had been left to me by my grandmother, a white wooden house faded to a sun-washed yellow, with a porch draped in bougainvillea and a low, weathered blue fence. I grew up there, surrounded by the fairy tales my grandmother told, through rainy seasons when she would hold me close and say, "When you grow up and get married, always keep a corner of your life just for yourself. No matter who it is, never give everything away." I nodded, but then I forgot. I met Jared when I was 23. At the time, I was doing the paperwork to transfer the house title, since my grandmother had passed away. I didn't understand the legal process well, and that's when Jared appeared, handsome, well-dressed, with a smile that could melt anyone's heart. He helped me fill out the forms, didn't take any money, just asked for my phone number. "I don't charge people with sad eyes like yours," he said. I laughed, and from then on, everything spun forward so fast I didn't even realize it. We started dating. He was always on time, always opened the car door for me, always told me I deserved more love than I'd ever known. Just 6 months later, he proposed. On the beach at sunset, with fireworks and a diamond ring. I was stunned, and my family was overjoyed. My mother said, "A country girl like you marrying a lawyer must be your grandmother's blessing." My father patted Jared on the shoulder all through the engagement party. As for my sister, Haley, she only smirked. She wore a blazing red dress, stood out in the ivory white wedding setting, and arrived almost an hour late. But I let it go. I thought I was starting a new life, and I wanted to keep everything peaceful. After the wedding, we moved into my grandmother's old house. I was the sole name on the deed, but Jared didn't care. He said, "We're husband and wife. What's yours is mine. All I need is for you to always be in this house with me." At the time, I believed him so much that, when he said he needed my name to take out a loan to open his law firm, I agreed without a second thought. I even handed him the original property documents because we're married, what's there to hide? I kept working remotely, managing the house and supporting my husband's career. He grew busier, dressed sharper, and came home later. Every weekend, Haley would come over. She often praised Jared. "My brother-in-law is such a catch. I don't know how you've managed to keep him this long." Then she'd turn to me and say, "You should learn to wear makeup. Successful men get bored easily." I just smiled. I didn't think too much of it. Haley had always been jealous of me because Grandma loved me more, because I did better in school, because I married a man like Jared. I never held it against her. I was that kind of person, always yielding, always thinking if I stayed quiet, everything would be fine. I didn't know. That silence was the trap, a trap set by the two people I trusted most in this world. I never thought there would come a day when I'd discover that hell existed right inside the home I once called my haven, and I could never have imagined the ones who pushed me into it would be the two people I loved the most. That night, Jared left his phone on the kitchen counter. It was nothing unusual. He went upstairs to shower while I was cooking, but the phone kept buzzing. A single name lit up the screen, H. I picked it up, intending only to silence it. But then, I saw the message. "Do you remember last night? When will she leave the house? I'm tired of pretending in front of my own sister." My hands froze. My throat tightened as if something had lodged there. I opened the conversation. They had exchanged words only lovers would say. There were secret photos taken inside my bedroom, insults about how I dressed, how I spoke, and even their plan to transfer the house ownership. It was all there. I ran upstairs, shoved the phone into Jared's hands, my whole body trembling. Explain this. He looked at me without the slightest panic. On the contrary, he was cold, calm in a way that terrified me. You're invading my privacy, he said. I felt like I was going insane. So it's true? My sister, Haley? He sighed, speaking as though I were the one causing trouble. This is your fault. You've grown distant. You've changed. Haley, at least she knows what I need. I was stunned, not because he admitted it, but because of how he twisted it, painting himself as the victim. A few hours later, Haley arrived. She didn't apologize. Instead, she smirked, folded her arms, and said, "How long did you think you could keep him?" It only took me a few months to make him see who was really right for him. I screamed at them both, throwing them out of my house. But I didn't know I was the one about to be thrown out. Just 3 weeks later, I received a letter from a law office. Notice of a transfer of property ownership. Panic surged through me. I rushed to check the documents, and the truth came out. Jared had secretly transferred the portion of the property under his name to Haley, and my share had been signed away the day I agreed to update the legal documents for the bank loan he claimed he needed. I hadn't read the papers carefully. I had trusted him. It all happened while I was mourning another loss, our first child. One morning, I woke in a pool of blood, the pain so sharp I couldn't even stand. Jared wasn't home. Haley sent me a message. "Don't call him. He's with me." While I lay in the hospital, broken from losing my baby, and in a state of panic, Jared sent someone to pressure me into signing another document, saying it would quickly settle the house matter to avoid a lawsuit. I signed, through tears, through pain, through my own stupidity. And then I lost everything. The house my grandmother left me, the place I grew up in, the place I thought I would raise my child, was no longer mine. Jared and Haley officially moved in, living as husband and wife, and I was thrown out without an apology, without a single cent of what was mine. I had fallen into a darkness with no way out. Just a month earlier, I had been a wife, a sister, and the legal owner of a beautiful seaside house in California. A month later, I had only myself, no home, no husband, and no child to whom I had given all my hopes. I rented a damp, shabby room in San Diego, drifting through the days, unable to get out of bed for a whole week. Some days I had no money for food and survived on plain water. The man I had shared a bed with for 5 years was now living with my own sister in my house. I called home, hoping my parents would take me back. My mother only said, "You should let it go. Haley is still young. She has a future. Don't make things harder for her." I understood. In my family's eyes, I was only the eldest daughter, never the one to make them proud. I hung up. It was the last time I called home. 2 weeks later, I collapsed on the street from blood loss. At the hospital, the doctor discovered I was carrying twins. One had already passed. But miraculously, the other was still alive. I looked at the ultrasound screen. Something inside me awakened. I thought, if this baby fought to hold on, then I had to fight to live. Even if there was only one left, even if the whole world turned its back on me, I would still be a mother. I sold my wedding ring to pay the hospital bills. I started over from nothing, taking an administrative job at a small real estate office, working 10 hours a day, studying online at night to earn more qualifications. Some days I had to ask someone to babysit in exchange for leftover food or cleaning their house. I scrubbed toilets in low-income apartment complexes. I was yelled at by clients for sending the wrong contracts. I was turned down dozens of times when applying for startup loans. But I didn't give up. I learned how to negotiate, how to price a house, how to read a client. I earned my real estate broker's license and slowly built a name for myself. When my child turned 5, I opened my first small office, just 2 employees. When my child turned 10, I had 3 branches. By the time my child started high school, I was the CEO of a real estate company specializing in buying foreclosed homes, the exact same way I had once lost mine. I didn't choose revenge. I chose wealth. I made enough money to buy back everything I had lost. I didn't post on social media, didn't show up at reunions, didn't return home for family gatherings. I lived in silence, but no one could control me anymore. Then, on a scorching summer day in the 15th year, I saw a familiar house listed among bank foreclosure properties. It was my old house, mortgaged, up for sale, valued at less than half its true worth. I signed the purchase contract. No bargaining, no questions. I only told my lawyer, I want everything in the house kept exactly as it is, even the old photos on the wall. He gave me a strange look. I smiled. They're not happy memories, but I need them there when the old owners come back. I thought the past had been buried forever in that old house. The only thing I kept was the deed, a cold piece of paper, without feelings, without tears, without memories. I bought that house back from the bank in the 11th year after I was thrown out, not out of nostalgia, just because I wanted to keep it out of the hands of the people who once stole it from me. Over the years, I'd heard bits and pieces. Jared was still practicing law. Haley had opened an interior design company, posting online about her perfect life. They borrowed heavily to invest in real estate, opened showrooms for luxury model homes, wrapping themselves in the image of a successful power couple. Until the market turned, I didn't even have to ask to know what happened. A few calls from my old bank contacts, a few leaked lawsuits in the public records, photos of houses taped with foreclosure notices. Everything unfolded before me, like a film I didn't have to direct. Jared was sued by clients for botching contracts and had his law license revoked. Haley's company went bankrupt, her accounts frozen, her luxury furniture reduced to clearance items on auction floors. The house, the one they had moved into as husband and wife, was repossessed by the bank 3 times in 2 years. The last time, I waited, and I bought it back. Silently, I told no one. I made sure to keep everything inside exactly as it was. Not out of sentiment, but because I knew one day they would return. And they did. Not in the proud, polished form I remembered, but worn down, hollow, and bitter. I didn't feel glee. I didn't feel pity. I simply stood there, like someone who had once died and come back to life, quietly watching the 2 people who had pushed me out of my own life, now being pushed out by life itself. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need revenge, because sometimes the price of betrayal isn't in punishment. It's in the moment the betrayer has to bow their head in silence before the person they once looked down on. I didn't need to say much. All I had to do was let them see my name on the deed. All I had to do was let them understand that what they had once stolen had come back to the rightful place, the rightful hands, and the rightful value. Jared looked at me in disbelief, as if unable to accept that I, the woman he'd thrown out into the rain one night, was now standing before him as the legal owner of the house he was about to be evicted from. Haley stood beside him, trembling, clutching a worn handbag, her face drained of color. I didn't accuse. I didn't question. I didn't bring up the past. I didn't need to. My silence was the verdict. I instructed my lawyer to send them the official 7-day eviction notice, not a day late. If they didn't move out, I would hire a crew to lock the doors and put everything on the curb, exactly the way it had been done to me. I didn't use harsh words. I didn't dig through old wounds. I simply did what they had done to me, but with law, dignity, and composure. My story didn't need drama. I didn't need to smash a wine glass or throw water in anyone's face. I only needed to reclaim my place with the strength I'd built from the ruins they left behind. I turned away from the white wooden gate, the same one that had slammed shut behind me in the night all those years ago. My steps were neither hurried nor heavy. I wasn't angry anymore because I wasn't connected to them anymore. In these 15 years, I've learned one thing. Forgiveness is not letting go. Forgiveness is standing up, moving on, and making them realize they've lost something precious they will never have again. That morning, I made 2 cups of hot cocoa, just like always, one for me, one for my son. He sat by the window, headphones on, scribbling the final notes for the very first film score of his life. This year he turned 15, almost as tall as me, with a deep, warm voice and eyes that always looked at me as if I were the hero of his story. And maybe I truly was. We lived in a small villa in a quiet suburb, far from the old house I had once been thrown out of. Here, no one knew I had once slept on the cold floor of a rented room, or that I had walked through snow in winter, pregnant, begging for a job. The neighbors only knew me as the woman who ran a real estate company, dressed simply, often walked with her son in the evenings, and always smiled when greeting them. I kept everything simple. No sports cars, no designer brands. I had nothing to prove to anyone, because the people who needed to see had already seen, and the people who needed to lose had already lost. My son had never asked much about his father. Only once, when he was 10, he asked, "Mom, were you angry when they hurt you that much?" I sat down, held him close, and replied, "I used to be very angry. But then I realized if I kept holding on to that anger, my hands wouldn't be free to hold you." He smiled and buried his face in my shoulder. I never taught my son revenge. I taught him the value of kindness, of resilience, and of never letting the past define who you are. Some wounds never truly heal, but it's those very scars that shape the woman I am today. I am no longer the betrayed wife, no longer the sister cast out into the street, no longer the desperate woman knocking on office doors with trembling hands and a pregnant belly. I am a mother, a survivor, a woman who has walked through darkness and carried her own light out of it. At the end of the day, when my son says goodnight, I often whisper back, "Thank you for choosing to stay." And I know that after all I've lost, I've found a family again, not because of blood, but because of love that is real.